So writing, welcome to CE 528 lab assignment. We're working on the RAISE grant project proposal. And as I mentioned, RAISE is one of the few grant programs run by the federal government where the money directly comes to the local agencies or the municipal agency and is not funneled through state DOT. But the grant structure is still the same. Like anytime you're trying to realize a project, you will need to write grants proposal to get the funding for those. And this assignment is designed to help you at least understand some of the nuances of that. And it has its own, some peculiar ideas about not necessarily peculiar in terms of how you do benefit cost analysis, but how it wants you to count the benefits, which benefits it wants you to consider and all that. So there is a presentation and a recording for the BCA that you might want to watch that I think would be helpful to you as you describe various. So I think that will be your first order of business, is that as a group, you all should watch this recording of the BCA webinar presentation. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And then ultimately, your grant should include, or it should be aimed at transferring a street into a complete street with access to multimodal facilities, maybe possibly including a roundabout if you can fit it in there. And then just propose. So there is what I found was like there was one successful grant recently through the build grant proposals, previous cycle. This current year cycle was just concluded. They just accepted application on May 20th. So I don't think they've even announced the grant awards for this year for the RAISE grant, the first cycle of RAISE grant. Up until last year, it used to be called the build grant. And I did find one build grant proposal. And there is not a big difference in the programs, by the way. The acronym has changed. Maybe some minor details have changed, but broadly the programs are structured similarly. But I found some very interesting from the City of Phoenix proposal, where they did basically what I'm asking you to do for a corridor in San Luis Obispo. They did that for the 35th Avenue build grant application. So there is an example grant application that you could look at. So you can go ahead and click on that and then figure out what they're doing. And then once you have identified a corridor, you'll need to show why it's a good candidate for the grant program and so on and so forth. And then I provide some more details there. So some benefit cost analysis here. And then assignment is somewhat open-ended. So that's a feature because I want you to think of more possibilities, think of how you might actually do this estimation of benefits and estimation of costs on your own. So I think that would be up to you here. And then, so this lab assignment has two deliverables. First, I have a deliverable for you where I'm asking you to do a presentation where you're going to have to, because obviously when you're trying to go do the cost estimation, you're not going to be able to do it in a vacuum. And this is not a, so you might have to do some literature search or some gray literature search, some report search, just so that you can do some assessment of costs and benefits for completing street conversion type of projects. You should be able to identify your site, where you're going to do this conversion, the length of corridor, the current modal situation, what's the modal mix of the current, and then other known issues such as safety, accessibility, and things like that. Some data sources that you might be looking at, and then the grant, and then the grant criteria where your project is particularly strong or weak, particularly weak. So I think identification of that will be, so I want all of those elements in your presentation that you're going to do as a group next week. And I want your PowerPoints to be uploaded by the start of lab next week so that we can spend the time next week to hearing each other's presentation. But by the end of the lab today, I definitely need to know where you're doing your project. And then I want like diversity in terms of the groups. I want all three groups to be doing 3 different corridors in the region, so not the same corridors. So if I do see that the groups are identifying similar corridors, I'll probably, so as soon as you have a corridor in mind, you let me know. And I'll make sure that all three groups are doing 3 different corridors. And then, then we'll have one more lab to work on the project, one more lab to work on our report. So we'll have some time to work on it. Obviously, we're going to work on the presentation details today. You're going to present next week, and then you will have one more week or one more lab session to work on your final report. And then the 3 weeks from today is when your final report will be due. And that will have the title page, the project narrative, the project description, the project parties, the grant recipients that will be involved, and then funding sources, how you're going to get the matching funds. And again, these are not supposed to be final things, right? So these are supposed to be what will be your best understanding of this right now. And then I described the USDOT grant criteria. So there are 5 primary selection criteria: safety, state of good repair, economic competitiveness, environmental sustainability, and quality of life. And then there is 2 more: innovation and partnership. And then all of those details of each of these individual elements you can find on the resources that I shared earlier. So if you look through some of the resources here in the outreach section of the lab document description, that's where it's provided. And then I'm looking for a submission for your final report about not to exceed 8,000 words, which each table and figure counting as 250 words. So it's going to be a lengthy report, but don't make it more lengthy than 8,000 words. And with each, and then what's included is each figure and table. I will not count, and yeah, so I'll not like, so in each table and figure will be counted as 250 words. And then the citations are not included in the word count. So if your citations make it more than 8,000 words, that's fine. I have no minimum limits, but so try to do it in as fewer words as possible, but still meeting all the report criteria or proposal criteria that I described. So here is what I will do. I will open up the breakout rooms for each of the 3 groups. And here is a strategy that I would suggest. And you could differ from this strategy as you're working, and that's fine. But here is like a proposed strategy that seems to work well for groups in the past. I will think about first which corridors in the city or the county or even city of Santa Maria, if you're familiar with that, that might work as a corridor for complete street conversion that you might want to look at. Okay, so first things that's what I'll decide. Where might you want to have complete street conversion, and where do you think the cars maybe are traveling too fast? Maybe if they had a, bike path or a bike lane or a protected bike lane and some bus stops and some multimodal mix for pedestrians and pedestrian crossings and whatnot, where that will most help. So come up with one corridor like that and let me know that as soon as possible. And then the next thing I want you to do is, once you have gotten my go ahead for that corridor, because I want to make sure that as a class, we're doing 3 different corridors. Once you've gotten my go ahead, go through and explain to each other what this document means. If there is any questions or confusion about this document that I have provided here as a Google Doc, please ask me. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go through the document as a group and maybe list out all the questions or comments or concerns you have. Once I've read through the whole document, you make sure that you ask me about those concerns, how you're going to do some things or whatever, if something is not clear in this document. So that's something that you could ask me. And then once you've asked me that and I've clarified, then you will start, okay, I'll look at some examples. Then I'll start looking at some resources that are provided on the Raise Grant portal. And then some resources that I provided on that Phoenix project that was successful in securing grant funding through this program. So I'll look at those. And then based on that, I'll still figuring out, okay, what data do I need? What cost estimates do I need? And then I'll start putting together that as a PowerPoint presentation or a Google slide presentation that fits all the criteria that I define for this presentation. Okay, so that would be my strategy for today. And with that, I will take a pause. And if there are any questions, please let me know. But if there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and open the breakout room for you all. And then please go to your breakout room based on the groups that I had described before. And what I'll do is, in fact, I'll post the name of the group members also at the end of the Google Doc. So that's easier for you all. So there is the Google Doc also has all your group members. So let me go ahead and open breakout rooms.